if you are lost and you're searching and you're trying to figure out like what am I here for, I think you know you're looking for wisdom and insight and understanding into your life, right?
Mhm.
Well, the beginning of wisdom is welcome to Own the Future, a podcast made for and by changemakers, where we gain the courage to own our stories, the freedom to own our craft, and the power to own the future. I'm your guest today, still Lucas Grobot, and we are joined by Abdullah Maawali from True Story Tent, where Abdullah gets to ask me the questions. If you have not listened to part one of this series, 3-part series, I highly suggest you go back and listen to part one, as there's a lot of things in there that are needed to make sense of part two. Without any further ado, here is part 2 of 3 of this series with Abdullah and I. Brands bring people into that purpose. They help people find and discover their purpose.
Why?
So why? Because what else is there in life?
What do you mean, man?
What do I mean? So why is purpose so important?
Why is it important to you that people find their purpose?
Because in you, Abdullah, you have something that I need in order to be successful. I might not know what it is. You might not know what it is. But the older, and I'm not old, I'm only 33, the older that I get, the more that I realize that there is something in you that I need to be successful, that the world needs to be successful. Right? I mean, and I've said this before, like the fact that we're sitting here and that someone out there is listening on the internet, there is 10,000 layers of people giving something to society that's enabling you and I to be successful right now. The internet. I needed the internet to be successful. Electricity, an airplane, a microphone, running water, vaccines.
Right.
All those things enable me to be successful as an individual. So what contribution do you have to the world? Even if you're like, we needed our moms to be successful. We needed our dads to be successful. We needed our friends to be successful. Our success is from this ecosystem. And so if I can help people step into their purpose, because I mean, I feel like I'm pretty clear on my purpose. I'm pretty clear on my identity. I feel like I have that solidified in so many ways, but there's days where I'm like, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah.
Why? Like, why am I doing this? Like, I should just forget being a freelancer or an entrepreneur or whatever, small business owner. Forget about that. I'm just going to work at Sears. Like, I'm just going to work at Lulu.
Yeah, hell, live in a cave and wait till it ends. You know what I mean? But why not do that? Why does it matter for you to help people find their purpose? Like a lot of people live a purposeless life,
and it's so sad.
Sad to
like it could bring me to to think of
right.
The number of graveyards that you can go look at.
That's the majority.
With buried dreams.
It's sadly the majority of people.
But it's not our destiny. It's not what we're called to. It's not what we were placed on this earth. It's not why we were born. We were not born to just exist and die. Like we're born with things that were in us, creativity, whatever expression that looks like, whether you're a heart surgeon or a tax accountant. Like we were born to live and walk something out.
Says who?
I mean, that then goes into this massive question of faith, the existential God. And, I talk about that in that series, the sacred space. Like what you believe about the sacred space defines everything else in your life. So there was an argument, but someone posted something witty on LinkedIn. I don't follow them, but someone likes it and someone else likes it, and then it comes up on your feed, right? And it was this whole thing of brands don't have any purpose. We're all just floating on a rock through space because of evolution, and this whole thing so there's no purpose. So if there is a purpose, like the only thing that brands can do is, be ethical. I'm like, wait a minute. If there is such a thing as ethics, that there's actually right and wrong, then that means that there is some sort of meaning to life, some sort of purpose to our existence.
Or else it's chaos.
Otherwise, it's chaos. And it's
like the Joker movie.
Yeah. If I believe that everything just kind of spun out of like nothingness and chaos, and we're just like, apes roaming around, then like, well, what does it matter if I kill people? It's all nihilism. They're all gonna die anyways. Like, who cares?
Right.
But the fact that we know that that's wrong points to the fact that, well, there must be some value in human life. And if there is some value in it, then there's purpose in it. Even if that purpose is just to enjoy one another in a relationship, to laugh and to be with our kids.
Is that not enough?
It is enough.
So it doesn't have to be a grand purpose.
No.
Of changing other humans' lives.
And that's why we started in this conversation with the moms.
Right.
Because this is the thing. If you draw this equation, and I have done this in my life, I have had an algorithm in my life of saying, okay, well, man, Elon Musk, wow, he's really changing the world. He must be really successful. Wow, look at this person who's Oprah. Look at the influence and impact that she's had. So now all of a sudden, not everyone can be successful. Yeah. Not everyone can have, there's a hierarchy bar. And, only the 1% will actually be successful, will actually find their purpose. You have to be famous. You have to be well known. You have to be rich. You have to, if that's what success is and that's what purpose is, then, well, what happens to the mom who's who's in China among like the Uyghur people, and she's living in a hut, and maybe she has a smartphone, but really she's just raising her kids. Like,
right.
She has value.
Absolutely.
She has purpose. And so if we're defining purpose based off of these, I think capitalism has done an incredible thing for the world globally. The ratchet of capitalism, of the slow improvement, has pulled millions of people out of poverty and has extended their lifespan by a lot. But if we then translate capitalism to our value and our purpose, in saying you are only valuable, you are only purposeful, you are only contributing to society if you're bringing in a GDP, if you're bringing in finance, well, then the system's broken. And that's not where purpose comes from. Purpose does not come from what you do, but it comes from who you were created to be, and stepping into that place of knowing, that's why it's Weaver and Loom. And the irony with Own the Future and Weaver and Loom is that the Weaver and the Loom is talking about ancient mythology, where it's fate that wove your destiny, where it's the gods that wove on a loom. So whenever you see a weaver and a loom, it's always talking about fate. It's always talking about destiny. And so there's this kind of double entendre, for lack of a better word, where it's saying we are weaving our fate, we are weaving our destiny, but it's actually already been woven. Like there's actually, we're part of a bigger tapestry, and we're just a few threads in it. And we can choose to step into that and weave that and write that and agree with that, or we can choose not to.
But this is where it gets complicated. This is all an assumption that it's clear to you what your fate is or what your destiny is.
I don't think it's clear.
No, I mean, maybe that's not fate or destiny is the word I'm using, but maybe it's clear to you what steps you need to take.
And I don't think it's clear.
Because at least, maybe we can boil it down to a couple of things that help you navigate what you should be doing. If you're born with a specific skill that you're better than other people at doing, then perhaps that could lead the way towards maybe this is how I could contribute to society. Perhaps. That's one way. majority situation isn't like that. There are lots of people who are not married, don't have kids, so it's not like they have to take care of a family or anything, especially in this middle-age modern day society that we live.
Yeah.
They don't have a skill that they're particularly good at, and they're lost.
100%.
And so when you say follow your destiny or follow, what does that mean? You know what I mean? What does it mean to them?
And that's what I was, what does that mean?
Let me just make it clear.
yeah,
I feel
make
like,
it clear.
at least it's for me, just to clarify for myself, I feel like the path forward is a little clearer to me compared to a lot of people that I know where it's very unclear. Like, even if you want to help them, like, I don't know, because it's so unclear what finding a purpose means to them. So what does it mean to the majority of people, maybe who are not listening to this podcast? I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast are perhaps they have
But I think even you and I, who you said that you know what it is,
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know, but I feel
don't
like
know either.
I
They're
kind of
questions.
yeah.
And I think you know through asking the question. It's the question that's important. And trying to live out that question, seek out that answer, to seek out wisdom. And I talk about this. So many people are trying to seek out happiness, thinking that, well, if I'm happy, then I'm happy. I need to be happy.
I totally agree with you. I heard that. Like, that's the wrong question to be asking. I totally agree with that.
It's because wisdom, if you pursue wisdom and truth, with it comes wealth, comes long life, and comes happiness. But if you pursue happiness, oftentimes our algorithm happiness is off and it looks like temporary pleasure. So when people start pursuing happiness, they're pursuing pleasure, and with that comes this negative spiral where you begin to make poor decisions based on what feels good in the moment, which will end up with really bad long-term effects for your life.
So you're just the mere act of seeking.
I'm saying you need to be like everything that I'm doing. I don't have answers. I'm not looking to give people answers. I'm saying ask questions.
Right.
Ask questions.
But the knowledge of the universe is so vast, and you may not have the answers, but you have somewhat of a path. The path might be unclear, filled with bushes, and like, is that really a path? Is it not a path? But it kind of looks like a path that I'm gonna walk down for a while and see where this takes me.
Mm-hmm.
You have that sense, at least.
At
the very least.
I mean, that would be an under-exaggeration, yeah.
Right, but at the very least, I feel like for me, same. I kind of, there is this path, but some people, they're like in the middle of a jungle. There is no path. Where do I go? Do I ask questions back there, or do I ask questions?
And that's where it goes back to the sacred space, right?
What is that?
The sacred space is what, I talked about on the gates, defend your gates, build your walls, defend your gates. And part of what happened in the gates of a city was a sacred space, which speaks to what do you believe the origin of all this comes from? Where does it all come from? Where did it all start? How did we end up here? Was it some evolutionary, Darwin process, which, by the way, has led to the destruction of the environment? Darwinism has led to the destruction of the environment, or
wait.
Yeah,
you need to clarify on that.
So the environment is been destroyed because we've adopted Darwinistic thoughts, which is the survival of the fittest, right? So then all of a sudden we have humans that are believing it's not our responsibility to take care of the world because it's all chaos anyways. There is no purpose. It's just nature duking itself out. And because of that, it has led to corporations and people and governments and people doing what can get them ahead fastest rather than being held to a higher standard.
But that's a huge leap, man. It's a huge.
Smarter people than I have articulated it better than I have done.
But it's saying that it's almost saying that if you're not religious, then you're likely to do harm, while religious people don't. That's kind of what it sounds to me. I
can see that leap, and I'm definitely not saying that. And I was saying that Darwinistic ideologies. Notice I didn't say non-religious ideologies. Because
Right.
you can be non-religious, and I mean, there's how many people out there like, yeah, you know, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual, and I know there's some God out there. You know, that whole evolution thing. I don't know. I mean, maybe parts of it, but you know, and even all evolutionary theory, it all comes back to there was some event that happened, some big bang, but we don't know what caused it, but something had to have caused it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there was this funny meme the other day where it's like Darwin and all these other guys climb up to the side of the mount, like this cliff, and they get up on top of the cliff, and there's all like the major religious leaders. And like, they're like, welcome. It's like, all right. So like the science has done all this work to try to like find out, you know, where it all started, and they get back just to where all the faiths have been. So anyways, I digressed us from the conversation.
I think I encouraged that.
Yeah, you did. So now I lost my train of thought. So back to what was the question?
That's a good question. Well,
it goes back to the sacred space.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we believe about where we come from and where we're going, our faith. What is, you know, the divine's interaction with the world? How does he position, or she or it, God, Allah? How is that positioned in the world? What's its interaction with us? That defines how we live. I believe that, and I talked about this at True Story Tent.
Okay.
I talked about it on your show.
A lot of people who are listening to this didn't listen to that episode, so you can just go and repeat it.
Which is, I believe that God is intimately and actively involved in our lives. He wants to be.
Right.
Right. And so with that, right, I believe like there's a verse that says, you know, a voice will be behind you that tells you to the left or the right. It will tell you where to go. It will lead you and it will guide you. So it goes right back to the dream.
Yeah, I knew we were going to get back here.
Yeah,
I knew
you did a great job at architecting this episode to bring it right back here.
Just winged it.
It's like, so, right, it comes all the way back to that of, you know, I am just as blind as anyone else is in navigating my purpose, my destiny, my worth, my value. But I have a relationship in a communion, for lack of a better word, that is back and forth, where I have submitted my decision making to a higher power, to God, where I believe, I say like, you know, I actually am, you know, when I was in high school, I'll tell this story. When I was in high school, I had this very, very clear moment. I was walking to algebra class, and I remember thinking, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I want to do whatever I can do to become happy. And I remember just in that moment, like I said in my head or out loud or talking to God, I said, you know what, God, you don't make me happy. I'm unhappy. I'm depressed. I'm going to go and do what makes me happy. I made a deliberate decision and said, I know what's best for my life. Guess what happened? What was the next 4 or 5 years of my life like? What do you think?
Was it with the aid of God or without?
No, when just think, what if I all of a sudden made a deliberate decision in my life, said I want to be happy? What do you think the ramifications over the next 4 or 5 years would be?
Well, if you just said I want to be happy, probably gonna seek pleasure.
Gonna seek pleasure.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
Yeah.
And guess what the byproduct of that was? Depression.
Yeah.
Suicidal thoughts.
It could be so much worse. Yeah. It could
right?
be, yeah.
Self-hatred. Hatred of others. Mean. Like I hated everything. It got worse and worse and worse. And one day I woke up and like, wait a minute, this is not working. I decided I wanted to be happy, and I started to do things that made me happy. I started to pursue pleasure instead of being led by the divine. And it led me in the exact opposite place I wanted to go. So I said, you know what, khalas, you know, I'm going to lay down my will and I'm going to submit my life to be led by the voice of God rather than by my own desires. Because I believe God exists outside of time, and so I believe that we were all knit and created in our mother's womb, and so he can lead and guide me to where he wants to lead me and guide me if I'm willing to follow.
Is that a prerequisite to achieve your destiny or purpose or to find meaning in your life? Is it a prerequisite that you believe in a divine power? Do you think that's a must?
That's
Is there no other path?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that question, as I think it's a really loaded question, and I feel like if I answered it either way, I wouldn't be able to do the question justice. I think I would say this. I don't live in areas I do, which are areas that I need to work on, areas that in my life that are unhealthy, that are not fully healed, that are not fully, what they should be. But I'm not living my life looking for affirmation. I'm not living to try to find a status symbol. I'm not looking to define my life based on, I'm not searching for meaning, right? I'm not acting in the world so that I can gain value. But I know, or gain love, or gain affirmation. I'm operating in the world knowing that I'm already loved. I already have value. I already have purpose. I already have destiny. And it's not tied necessarily to my actions, but it's tied to my identity. That because of what I believe of the divine and of God, that he has spoken and given me my identity, and it's not based on my merit, right? My identity is, and my value, my worth is actually not based on my merit. Quite the opposite. I believe that my merit is like trash. Like the greatest I can do on a good day is like crap. So I recognize, okay, it's not based on my merit. My merit sucks. Like flawed.
Crap as opposed
sucks.
to what?
As opposed to the divine.
Oh.
As my, right?
Anything.
Anyone.
Right. If you're gonna compare it to the divine.
So then when you're comparing it to the divine, but then here's the thing with all, and I don't want to use the word religions, with carbon credit, reducing your carbon footprint, with humanism and trying to be a good person. You're going to do more good than more bad. That's all based on, okay, can you build credit and merit for you as an individual in your life? What is your merit? How do you measure up on the scale of the world?
Mm-hmm.
And so actually what I believe is that actually I can never, and we've had this conversation before, I can never do enough. And any of my attempts would be completely and utterly feeble to outweigh the chaos and the pain that I've caused in other people in my life. I could never get to zero on the merit scale, because every day I'm screwing up, every day I'm failing, every day I'm hurting people. How can I ever repay that? So it's coming from a place of knowing my merit sucks, but then I've been given an identity. I've been given forgiveness. I've been given a merit and an identity that is not of my own. And so no longer do I have to try to operate to earn something, but I'm operating out of the place of I've already been given something and I'm walking that out in the earth.
Right.
So I'm no longer performing.
I'm hesitant to pursue this path of questioning, to be honest. It's starting to feel Christian.
It is Christian.
Yeah.
It's full. Yeah, I mean, it is Christian.
If I pursue this line of questioning, now it's not now I'm gaining into the core of Christianity here, and I'm not sure if
well, you're the one running this interview.
Yeah, I know. I noticed where I felt where this is going, which is intriguing. But
no, it's very Christian.
It is, but I'm not sure for the set or this episode. I feel like this is a whole different world because I have this curiosity. There's a lot of questions I want to go into just based on what you're saying, but maybe I want to pull back
I like hey
a little. Let's talk about those dreams.
Yeah.
You think those dreams are a message?
I think you said you wanted to pull back out of Christian,
Here
but
we
it's
go
you're
again.
diving right back in. So I don't know how that's really pulling out.
It's okay. No, I mean, it's one thing about talking
You know,
about.
and both.
Okay.
Islamic faith believes this. Probably, Judaism believes this. Probably most of the monotheistic faiths believe this. So I don't think this is expressly what I'm about to say is expressly Christian.
Mhm.
But we, you and I, we believe the Abrahamic faiths believe that God speaks to people through dreams. And oftentimes when you look at the Holy Scriptures, you see that someone had a vision in the night. What's a vision in the night? It is a dream, right? So oftentimes the divine God is communicating and leading and guiding people through dreams. Now, at the same time, there's evidence to say that, well, also there's many people who are just led by their dreams and it's actually not from the divine. The source isn't pure and that there's a mixture in that source. So it's hard to say are all dreams from the divine? No. Sometimes, there are nightmares. Those are not from God. I think that's a sign of, some sort of oppression or pain, brokenness in life. So I'm not saying that all dreams are, but I think some dreams are.
I think the way I see dreams for me, I'm curious what you think of this is.
How about this? Let me tell you before you ask that question.
Okay.
So this last couple weeks ago, I had this dream. I had a dream that I was at the airport. I was supposed to fly somewhere. And I get to the check-in counter and I don't have my passport. I'm searching for I can't find it. Can't find my passport anywhere. Can't find my Emirates ID. I'm trying to pull it up on the phone to show the flight attendant maybe like they'll let me fly without my passport. My passport's 40 minutes away at home. I can't go back and get my passport and come back to make it on time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm like, what do I do? I'm like freaking out. I'm going to miss my flight. And then in the dream, I don't know whether I prayed in the dream or what happened, but all of a sudden I reached and there my passport and Emirates ID was in my back pocket and I broke down weeping at the front desk, like at the ticket counter. I start bawling because like all that stress and anxiety of like, what's my identity? Where's my identity? Who am I? I've lost, I'm searching for, I've lost my identity in order to go on to the next stage of life. Where is it? Oh, all of a sudden it's given to me in my back pocket. Now get this is the crazy thing. Mm-hmm. My wife and I, we went to the embassy last week to get our youngest son's passport. I lost my passport in the embassy, praise God. But for two, I've never lost my passport before.
Lost it twice.
We left a folder with all of our documents, all of our paperwork in the consulate. Came home the next day, looking all over, frantic, looking, calling the taxi,
right.
And so, that dream to me, it's like, okay, that was a significant dream. Not only was it a significant dream that happened in a dream, but then in a way, it actually manifested in the natural.
Right. The way I could possibly see this story, and it's the way that I generally think of dreams, is your brain does a lot of work in its subconscious.
100%.
Right?
And normally I chalk dreams up to that, but then there's some dreams that have a different quality to them where I know that it's not just a dream. It's not just my subconscious, but there's a different source.
Because the way you explained that dream, about, how it relates back to your identity, it sounds like your subconscious talking to me. Now,
completely.
Now the fact that you actually lost your passport after that, yeah, possibly it could be.
So yeah, is it coincidence?
Or it could be a self-fulfilling, like, yeah, you know what
Is
I
it a
mean?
self-fulfilling? And that's the thing. You could read it in different ways. For
Yeah,
me,
it's
because I am attuned to the spiritual realm,
Yeah.
because I'm attuned to my dream life,
Mhm.
right? Because I know, like, I have that sensation. Like when I woke up from that, I was like, it was so real.
Mm.
It was like, no, this was a significant dream. And yes, like it was probably tied to my subconscious. I was journaling and writing about that the night before, asking, seeking wisdom. And this is the thing, when you ask, if you doubt, then you're double-minded and you're not going to receive anything.
Mm.
But if you're asking with faith, believing that you're going to get what you ask for, so then when you receive what you ask for, don't dismiss it and discount it.
How do you explain these brilliant contributors to mankind who did not believe in anything beyond their death? How did they
Like
do
which
it then?
people specifically?
Uh,
It's irregardless. I mean,
yeah.
some people.
You cannot say they don't exist.
No, I know they exist. I was gonna say, like, there's some people that didn't believe in anything beyond death, and they actually didn't. They didn't contribute to something positive to this
Right.
world. But there's a lot of artists who have. And so that's where I'd say,
But I
there's
understand the arguments of
the gifts of God, as they say, the gifts of God are irrevocable, which means, and there's a verse that says that God sends the rain on both the righteous and the wicked.
Mhm.
That God is kind and merciful and loving to the wicked. And then it goes on to say, so be perfect as God is perfect, meaning be merciful and kind to wicked people in your life, because God's merciful and gives good gifts to wicked people. I mean, I'm talking about real, like, evil mass murderers, like human traffickers, corrupt people. Like, he's generous and kind to them. So you do not need to, have some sort of like faith in the divine to be able to do great and amazing things in this world.
Mhm. So now you just answered the question that you couldn't answer earlier on when I asked you, do you need faith to be able to find meaning and purpose and
I
do
never
great
said
things?
that you necessarily found meaning and purpose, because so many of those people that you said were nihilists or existentialists are actually going through this world
A lot of
flooded with
Hmm.
anxiety, and existentialism actually embraces that anxiety, believing that they are the masters of their own destiny, and the music that they are listening to on the way out of the door will affect the rest of their life. And so
Mm.
they're riddled and wrote with anxiety, or nihilism, with depression and hopelessness, and they're going through this world with actually, okay, they're contributing to society, but they don't have an interior. They're not rooted and grounded in the
Mm.
interior world, in who they are, in
So you
with that
can do
peace.
amazing, great things for mankind and
Sure,
humanity,
why not?
but have no meaning and purpose.
And I wouldn't necessarily say no meaning and purpose, because I don't know all these people. I'm sure they actually believe that they know what. Maybe there's probably a lot of people who say, "Well, I know what my purpose is." I'm no way am I putting words in someone's mouth saying you don't know what your purpose is, or you don't God, or you don't know what your purpose is. You don't have meaning. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm not being dogmatic and saying, like, hey, if you don't have this one thing, that you
Mhm.
can't possibly know what your meaning or purpose is, or you can't possibly do great and amazing things in this world.
Mm.
Not saying that at all. I mean, you even look at, King Cyrus, who he wrote the first human Bill of Rights 3,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago.
Who's I don't know who this is.
Cyrus was an ancient Babylonian king,
Mm.
you know, for sure, like pagan craziness, like to the max.
Mm.
He wrote the first human Bill of Rights.
Right.
So I'm not saying it, and that's why it's so nuanced. But I think there is there's still a source that it all comes from. And I think so many of us are going through life trying to achieve to fill that hole, to fill that question of who am I? What is my worth? What is my value? And we begin to work for that value and work in the earth rather than working from that value and worth in the earth.
Right. So I know it might not make sense to try to summarize such a complicated topic, but it's the question I asked earlier, which we went through a whole conversation based on this one question I asked earlier. There are people who are lost, who cannot see that even a vague path of what knowledge they should pursue, and your answer to that is to seek the source,
Yeah, of course.
and the source is the divine.
Yeah, the beginning of and again, this is all of the three monotheistic Abrahamic faiths would believe in this verse, which is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. The fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom. And when I say fear of God, I don't mean like you're petrified of him, but it's more the awe and reverence of the divine. That is the beginning of wisdom. Because just as gravity is the law of nature, right? There are morals that are laws of nature, right? And so with that, I would say, yes, if you are lost and you're searching and you're trying to figure out like, what am I here for? I think, you're looking for wisdom and insight and understanding into your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the beginning of wisdom is, fearing God, like having an awe and a reverence and this beautiful kind of respect for God. And then get wisdom. So with that, it's like, okay, I'm going to search out, I'm going to seek out, I'm going to search for and find wisdom, because with wisdom comes what we're looking for. We're all looking for wealth. We're all looking for a long life. We're all looking for happiness. But if you pursue any one of these three things, you're going to lose on one point in some way or another. But if you pursue wisdom, you won't lose, because with it, wisdom, she endows her children with wealth, with long life, and with happiness. That's what wisdom endows her children with.
I think I've done a pretty good job
Yeah.
leaving my own what I believe out of this, but I'll just say it now. I totally agree with what.
Oh yeah, this was very one-sided.
Yeah.
You were asking crazy questions. What do you believe? Pull your side into it.
First, can I ask, how long have we been recording?
About an hour and 40 minutes.
Wow.
Hour and 40
What's
minutes.
your longest episode?
2.5 maybe.
Ooh, challenge accepted. No. I feel like we at least there needs to be a context for this episode. And so it makes a lot of sense that it is about you and your belief and where you're coming from and your ideologies. Maybe if we in the future, when True Story Tent is bigger and I'm doing bigger things, we can come and talk more about.
Why do you have to do bigger things?
Because I'm working towards it.
But why do you have to wait to do bigger things?
I'm not waiting. I am working towards it.
Why do you have to work to do bigger things before having this conversation?
What do you mean?
Well, because you're saying once I reach X, Y, and Z, then we can have this conversation.
I'm just trying to get the heat off me.
Yeah, you are. You're a talented host.
Thank you. I'm not. By the way, when it comes to interviewing people for True Story Tent, it's not long form. It's not like this at all. Like, to me, this experience is totally new. Like, I don't feel like my experience interviewing people for True Story Tent translates much here. And I'm noticing that it's a different way of interviewing, because the way I do it with True Story Tent is if for those of you who haven't heard it, it's basically people share their stories on stage. So Each storyteller is giving 9 minutes. 9 minutes is a decent amount of time to create a whole story arc, and it gives you a somewhat satisfying conclusion, but it's not so much time that you get all the details of a story. So there are lots of like little side journeys within these 9 minutes in someone's story that you can explore further.
Yeah.
So the way I would do it is I listen to their story, and I listen very carefully many times. And wherever there is a gap in the story where I feel like
You dive deep and
yeah, I just stop right there, chop that clip up, and write a question just based on that one bit. So when I am asking questions, I am very deliberate of the kind of information I am looking for. You know, because it's based on their story. There's a reference that I'm referencing here.
Yeah.
Whilst this, particularly today, that we didn't even know what this is gonna be, and just winging it. I feel like we got better as we went along. Like earlier, it was
The beginning was good, I thought. I thought the whole thing. I thought you
I like the end of it.
I wouldn't have known you didn't have a plan unless you told me. I felt like you backed me up into all the right corners. You painted me into the corner.
Oh, there's more.
And then you got me. Oh, there's more. Dear God.
Well, I don't know if you want to get into this.
No, I want to hear
not.
it. You just said there's more.
No,
How could I resist? It's like you just dangled the bait.
I don't know. I don't know. People who are listening to this. First of all, if you're listening this far into the interview, man, you're a solid fan of Lucas, like,
Or a solid fan of Abdullah.
I know. You know, man. I think if you are listening this far, they want to hear what you have to say. You've expressed views online that are considered controversial.
What views?
On
That is all for part 2 of this series with Abdullah Maawali and myself, where Abdullah gets to ask the hard questions, and he really impressed me on this episode. But stay tuned for part 3, where it goes from bad to worse. This is one of the questions that Abdullah asked me in this coming episode.
if you had to choose between saying something about this matter and it meaning it will destroy everything you're doing, and I'm not,
So be it.
let's create, really?
I hope you've enjoyed part 1 and 2 and be watching for part 3, which is coming out tomorrow. As always, I'm Lucas Grobot, and remember, if you own your story, you will own the future.